Okay, and now we're going to look at the last account, which is John's. Okay, and then we're going to do some discussion really quickly. So John, we're reading from 19, from 17. So, and he bearing his cross went forth into the place, into a place called the place of the skull, which is called in the Hebrew Golgotha. So we see that description there. And over here we see that Jesus bore his cross, right? He bore his cross first, and then he went ahead, and then we see in Matthew, Mark, and Luke that there was a man called Simon from Cyrene who helped him out. But in John we don't see that. And where they crucified him, and two other with him, one on the right, one on either side, and Jesus in the middle. And Pilate wrote a title and put it on the cross. And the writing was, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. So again, here we see a little bit more detail. So before it was, this is Jesus, or the King of the Jews. Now it's quite clear, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. This title then read many of the Jews, for the place where Jesus was crucified was nigh to the city, and it was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. Like I said, there was people who spoke those languages. Then the chief priests of the Jews said to Pilate, write not the King of the Jews, but that he said, I am the King of the Jews. Pilate answered, what I have written, I have written. So he didn't change it, because they wanted to say to him, they wanted it to say, this man proclaimed he was the King of the Jews. Whereas Pilate wrote, no, this is Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Then the soldiers, when they had crucified him, took his garments, made 4 parts, to every soldier a part, and also his coat. Now the coat was without seam, woven from top to throughout, so it was one piece, it was one whole piece. And they said therefore amongst themselves, let us not rend it, but cast lots for it, and whose it shall be. And the scripture might be fulfilled, which saith, they parted my raiment among them, and for my vesture they did cast lots. These things therefore the soldier did. So again we see that fulfillment of Psalms 22:18. Now there stood by the cross Jesus, his mother, and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Cleophas, and Mary Magdalene. And when Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciples standing by, whom he loved, he said unto his mother, Woman, behold thy son. Then he said unto the disciple, Behold thy mother. From that hour the disciple took her unto his own home. So here we see something else Jesus says, right? He acknowledges his mother's pain. We're going to talk about that in a second, but he acknowledges his mother's pain over here, and he sees the distress in his mother, and he says to his mother, Behold thy son. And then he tells John, by giving John the commission, look after my mother, by saying, Behold thy mother. Okay, so those are the 4 accounts.